Today we're exploring one of the most fascinating blind spots in Star Wars history, how the most powerful Jedi Council in galactic history completely missed the rise of their greatest enemy. We're talking about Darth Sidious, the Phantom Menace who orchestrated the fall of the Republic right under their noses. Now you might be wondering, how could the wisest Force users in the galaxy, led by Grand Master Yoda himself, fail to detect a Sith Lord operating in plain sight for decades? The answer isn't just about Force abilities or political manipulation. It runs much deeper than that, rooted in 1,000 years of false security and institutional arrogance that would ultimately doom the Jedi Order. So grab your lightsabers and let's unpack this incredible tale of deception, hubris, and the greatest con job in galactic history. To understand how the Jedi Council became so blind to the Sith threat, we need to travel back exactly 1,000 years before the events of the Phantom Menace. This is when the last great Sith war ended, and from the Jedi's perspective, the Sith were completely annihilated. The Battle of Ruusan marked what the Jedi believed was the final victory over their ancient enemies. The Army of Light, led by Lord Hoth, faced off against the Brotherhood of Darkness in an apocalyptic confrontation that seemed to end the Sith forever. When the dust settled, the Jedi found no survivors, no remnants, no trace of Sith influence anywhere in the galaxy. But here's where the story gets interesting. What the Jedi didn't know was that one Sith Lord survived, Darth Bane. And Bane was actually glad his fellow Sith were destroyed. Why? Because he believed the Sith had become weak, diluted by their numbers and infighting. So, he created something revolutionary, the Rule of Two. Now, the Rule of Two wasn't just about limiting numbers, it was a complete restructuring of how the Sith operated. Always two there would be, no more, no less. A master to embody power and an apprentice to crave it. This meant that instead of armies of Sith fighting amongst themselves, there would be only the strongest, most cunning survivors, passing their knowledge down through generations while remaining completely hidden. The genius of this system was that it created the perfect invisibility cloak. The Jedi were used to fighting Sith armies, Sith empires, and Sith academies. They weren't prepared to detect two individuals hiding among quadrillions of beings across the galaxy. For 1,000 years, this system worked perfectly, with each generation of Sith growing stronger while remaining completely undetected. After a millennium of peace, the Jedi Council had developed what we might call institutional amnesia. They had become the galaxy's peacekeepers, diplomats, and negotiators. The very idea of an active Sith threat seemed as remote as ancient mythology. Master Ki-Adi-Mundi perfectly encapsulates this mindset when he responds to Qui-Gon Jinn's report about Darth Maul with complete dismissal. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium. Notice how definitively he states this. Not "we haven't seen them," or "they've been in hiding, but extinct. Gone. Dead. Case closed." This wasn't just arrogance, though arrogance certainly played a part. The Jedi had restructured their entire worldview around the absence of the Sith. Their training, their missions, their understanding of the dark side, everything was filtered through the lens of the Sith being a historical curiosity, rather than an active threat. Think about it from their perspective. For 40 generations, no Jedi had encountered a Sith. The archives contained only legends and historical records. To the Jedi Council, suggesting that the Sith had returned would be like someone today claiming they'd met a living dinosaur. The burden of proof was enormous, and the institutional bias against believing such claims was incredibly strong. This is where we see the dangerous comfort of success. The Jedi had become so effective at maintaining peace that they'd forgotten what real war looked like. They'd become administrators of tranquility rather than warriors against darkness. The very success that made them complacent was also what made them vulnerable. Moreover, the Jedi's understanding of the dark side had evolved during this peaceful era. They saw dark side users as fallen Jedi, rogue Force users, or primitive cultists. The idea of a sophisticated, organized dark side philosophy that could match and potentially exceed their own seemed impossible. They had, in essence, forgotten that the Sith weren't just dark side users. They were their philosophical and practical equals, if not superiors, in many ways. Here's where things get really interesting. The Jedi didn't just dismiss the Sith as extinct, they had transformed them into legends, almost like cautionary tales told to younglings. The Sith had become mythological rather than historical in the Jedi consciousness. In the expanded universe materials, we learn that the Jedi archives contained extensive records about ancient Sith lords like Exar Kun, Darth Revan, and Darth Malak, but these were presented as historical figures, like studying Alexander the Great or Napoleon. Fascinating, important for understanding the past, but hardly relevant to current galactic affairs. The tragedy is that this mythologizing actually worked in the Sith's favor. When your enemy believes you're a legend, they're not looking for you in reality. It's the perfect camouflage. Palpatine could reference the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise as a Sith legend, precisely because the Jedi had relegated all Sith history to the realm of mythology. But there's another layer to this. The Jedi were actually aware of certain prophecies, particularly the prophecy of the Chosen One, who would bring balance to the Force. What they failed to understand was that bringing balance didn't necessarily mean destroying the dark side. It might mean restoring it to equal footing with the light. Master Yoda's famous line, "Hard to see, always in motion is the future," reveals a crucial weakness in the Jedi approach to prophecy and foresight. They were so focused on the possibility of seeing the future that they often missed what was happening in the present. The dark side was clouding their vision, but not in the way they thought. It wasn't obscuring their ability to see the future. It was hiding the present reality, that their greatest enemy was sitting right next to them, in the Senate. The Jedi had become so comfortable with their role as the guardians of ancient wisdom that they forgot wisdom also means recognizing when your assumptions might be wrong. They were fighting the last war in their minds, while the next war was being waged all around them. Now, we need to talk about the man himself, Sheev Palpatine. Because understanding why the Jedi didn't recognize Darth Sidious requires understanding just how brilliant his deception was. This wasn't just a simple disguise or hidden identity. This was a decades-long performance that redefined what deception could achieve. First, let's consider Palpatine's public persona. He wasn't just hiding in the shadows, he was hiding in plain sight at the very center of galactic power. As senator and later chancellor, he was someone the Jedi worked with regularly. They sat in meetings with him, advised him on policy, and even protected him from assassination attempts. The psychological principle at work here is that people are far less likely to suspect someone they interact with regularly and positively. But Palpatine's genius went deeper than just maintaining a good public image. He actually positioned himself as the Jedi's ally and supporter. He championed their causes in the Senate, increased their funding, and publicly praised their service to the Republic. From the Jedi's perspective, Palpatine wasn't just a political ally. He was one of their most important advocates in government. The Clone Wars showcased Palpatine's manipulation at its most sophisticated. He didn't just create a war, he created a war where both sides needed the Jedi's involvement, but in ways that slowly corrupted their principles. The Jedi became generals, leading clone armies into battle, making life and death decisions about military strategy rather than focusing on their spiritual development and force training. Every step of this process moved the Jedi further from their center, making them less able to detect dark side influence. When you're busy fighting a war, you don't have time for deep meditation and force reflection. When you're making tactical decisions about troop movements, you're not attuned to subtle shifts in the cosmic force. Palpatine didn't just hide from the Jedi, he systematically degraded their ability to find him. Perhaps most cunningly, Palpatine used the Jedi's own virtues against them. Their commitment to service made them willing to take on roles that compromised their spiritual clarity. Their dedication to protecting life made them vulnerable to manipulation through manufactured crises. Their respect for democratic institutions made them reluctant to act against a legally elected leader, even when their instincts told them something was wrong. The final masterpiece of his deception was how he revealed himself. When he finally told Anakin he was a Sith Lord, he did it in a way that made it seem like a confession rather than a revelation. "I am the Senate." That wasn't just a statement of political power. It was Palpatine revealing that he had become so integrated into the Republic's structure that removing him would mean destroying the very thing the Jedi were trying to protect. We need to address something that often gets overlooked in these discussions. The dark side of the Force itself was actively working to conceal the Sith. This wasn't just about Palpatine's personal abilities or clever planning. The cosmic force was being manipulated on a fundamental level. In The Phantom Menace, Master Yoda tells us, "The dark side clouds everything. Impossible to see, the future is." This line is more significant than it initially appears. The Jedi weren't just dealing with their own limitations or institutional blind spots, they were facing an active, supernatural interference with their abilities. The dark side operates differently than the light side of the Force. Where the light side seeks balance and harmony, the dark side thrives on imbalance and concealment. The very nature of dark side power includes deception, misdirection, and the ability to appear as something other than what it truly is. When a Sith Lord of Palpatine's caliber is actively working to cloud the Force, even the most powerful Jedi find their perception compromised. This is why Master Windu can sense that Palpatine is dangerous during their confrontation, but couldn't detect it during years of regular interaction. The dark side's influence had grown so strong by that point that it was actively warping reality around Palpatine, making him appear trustworthy and benevolent to casual observation while hiding his true nature. The Jedi archives hint at this phenomenon in their records of ancient Sith Lords, who could appear as beings of light, who could fool entire populations into believing they were saviors, rather than destroyers. But again, the Jedi treated these as historical curiosities, rather than practical warnings about what they might face in their own time. There's also the matter of what we might call Force signature masking. Advanced Force users can suppress or alter how they appear to other Force-sensitive individuals. Palpatine wasn't just hiding his Sith identity, he was actively projecting a false Force signature, one that read as benign, or even positive, to Jedi senses. This level of deception requires not just personal power, but a deep understanding of how other Force users perceive and interpret Force-based information. The cumulative effect was that the longer Palpatine operated undetected, the stronger his concealment became. Each successful deception fed back into his power, making the next deception easier. The dark side was literally growing stronger through successful concealment, creating a feedback loop that made detection increasingly impossible. Looking back at the prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars series, it's almost painful to see how many opportunities the Jedi had to uncover Palpatine's true identity. The warning signs were there, but they were either dismissed, rationalized away, or simply not connected to the larger pattern. Let's start with Qui-Gon Jinn's report about encountering Darth Maul. This should have been a galaxy-changing revelation. A Jedi Master encounters a genuine Sith Lord, and the Council's response is skepticism. Even after Qui-Gon's death clearly demonstrates that this was no ordinary dark side user, the Council treats it as an isolated incident, rather than evidence of a larger Sith conspiracy. Then there's Count Dooku, a former Jedi Master who turns to the dark side and becomes the leader of the separatist movement. The Jedi know he's fallen to darkness, but they don't seem to consider that he might be part of a Sith hierarchy. They treat him as a fallen Jedi, rather than recognizing him as Darth Tyrannus, apprentice to a Sith Master. The assassination attempts against Padme Amidala represent another missed opportunity. The Jedi investigate these attempts and trace them back to Kamino and the clone army, but they don't question how convenient it is. That a clone army ordered by a dead Jedi Master just happens to be ready, exactly when the Republic needs it most. The timing should have been suspicious, but instead, the Jedi accept it as fortuitous. During the Clone Wars, we see even more obvious signs. Palpatine consistently knows things he shouldn't know, he makes decisions that benefit both sides of the conflict, and he gradually accumulates emergency powers that would normally alarm any Republican institution. The Jedi notice these things individually, but never connect them into a pattern that points to Sith manipulation. Perhaps most telling, is how Palpatine always seems to have solutions ready for crises that emerge unexpectedly. When the banking clan threatens to leave the Republic, he has emergency powers ready to use. When the Separatists capture key systems, he has military strategies prepared. When individual Jedi question his authority, he has legal justifications ready to limit their independence. The tragedy is that Master Yoda, in particular, seems to sense that something is fundamentally wrong. His line, "Around the survivors a perimeter create," after Order 66, suggests he suspected organized betrayal rather than random clone malfunction. But even Yoda's considerable wisdom couldn't piece together the full scope of the deception until it was too late. There's also the matter of Anakin Skywalker's relationship with Palpatine. The Jedi Council clearly has concerns about this friendship, but they never investigate why the Chancellor would take such a personal interest in one specific Jedi. They see it as inappropriate, but not necessarily sinister. They miss the fact that Palpatine was grooming their chosen one from childhood. When the truth finally came out, it wasn't through careful Jedi investigation or Force-guided revelation. It was through Anakin Skywalker's confession to Master Windu that Chancellor Palpatine was the Sith Lord they'd been seeking. Even then, Windu's first reaction is disbelief, showing just how thoroughly the deception had worked. The confrontation in Palpatine's office reveals something crucial about the Jedi's blindness. When Palpatine drops his mask and reveals his true power, he's not just showing his Sith abilities. He's showing that he's been holding back this entire time. Every interaction the Jedi had with him, every meeting, every conversation, he was actively suppressing his true nature while they sat mere feet away from him. Master Windu's declaration that Palpatine is too dangerous to be left alive represents a complete reversal of 1,000 years of Jedi thinking. In a matter of minutes, their entire worldview had to shift. From "the Sith are extinct" to "the most powerful Sith Lord in history has been controlling the Republic for years." The psychological whiplash must have been enormous. But perhaps the most tragic aspect of this revelation is that it came too late to matter. By the time the Jedi recognized Darth Sidious, Order 66 was already in motion. The clone troopers had received their programming, the political pieces were in place, and the Jedi were scattered across the galaxy in vulnerable positions. The very war they had been fighting to protect the Republic had positioned them perfectly for destruction. The aftermath speaks to the completeness of Palpatine's victory. Not only had he eliminated the Jedi Order, but he had done it in a way that made them appear to be traitors to the Republic they had served for millennia. The galaxy celebrated their destruction, believing the propaganda that painted them as enemies of democracy rather than recognizing them as victims of the greatest deception in galactic history. So there you have it, the incredible story of how Darth Sidious remained a myth in the eyes of the Jedi Council, right up until the moment he destroyed them. It wasn't just one factor, but a perfect storm of institutional complacency, supernatural deception, masterful manipulation, and sheer bad luck that allowed the greatest evil in the galaxy to hide in plain sight. The lesson here isn't just about Star Wars, it's about the danger of assumptions, the importance of questioning authority, and the way success can breed the very complacency that leads to downfall. The Jedi Council thought they were too wise to be fooled, too powerful to be defeated, and too righteous to fail. They were wrong on all counts. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you. But maybe, keep your eyes open for Sith Lords, just in case. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Star Wars deep cuts, and let me know in the comments what other galactic mysteries you'd like me to explore.